Good morning, Facebook family, and welcome to another episode of Wednesday Wins. I'm your lifestyle designer, Jason Teeters, and I'm so happy you're here today. If this is your first time joining, welcome. This is my weekly live Facebook episode every Wednesday morning where I talk about some of the tactics and strategies and the things that hold us back and stop us from being the best we can be. And on today's episode, I'm super excited. I want to talk about the 3 roadblocks to change, right? We all know what that's like when we're trying to move forward, and for some reason, we're either paralyzed by overanalyzation, or we think too much, or we're nervous, or we're fearful about the future. And so in today's episode, I just want to describe what that feels like for myself, for a lot of my clients, and then I want to give you some things of what not to do. What you shouldn't do when you're confronted with change in your life, in your relationship, and in your business. And then before we end, I will give you a couple of tactics and things that I've learned and that I've shared with my clients to sort of help them move forward. So I'm excited. If this is your first time, make sure you hit the notification so you don't miss any of my episodes ever again, because they are great. I'm sure my fans will say that. But with that said, let's dive right in. So when we talk about change, right, over history, change has always been, it's always, well, you see that helicopter behind me, but throughout history, change is inevitable. It happens, and that's how our society has been built. That is how our lives work, right? Every step moves us closer to the next best thing. And so over the last 5, 10, 12 years, I know I'm not the only one experiencing this, but we've seen change just sort of ripple through every industry, every environment, every aspect of our life. And a lot of change can be overwhelming. And there's sort of ways that you can work around that, but I think it's important for you to understand what not to do. And so a couple things that I teach my clients and people of what not to do when change comes, right? Regardless of what it is, right? The first thing that you should not do, and the first crucial roadblock to dealing with change, is that a lot of times people focus on the short term. And that's understandable to some extent, right? Change happens right away. We react instead of respond, right? We react. That means, what can I do right now that stops this pain? What can I do in this instant that stops this pain? And that first reaction is not the problem, but it's what we do after that. We just leave it alone and we don't pay attention to it anymore. It just sits off to the side. And so what you have to understand, and one of the biggest roadblocks to your change, the first one, is that if you're only thinking short term, then you're going to be stuck in short term. And you're constantly needing to change and adapt and try new things and constantly feel under pressure and not knowing exactly what to do next. So that's the biggest roadblock that people have when change happens, right? The second roadblock to change, right? The second one is that they focus inward. Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to my business? Why is this happening to my relationship, my life? Right? Why am I being punished? Right? And so when change happens, a lot of times people only focus on what they can see and what they can think about, which is themselves. And overly, that's not a bad thing, except for we get stuck in that situation. Right? How many friends do you have that say, why does this always happen to me? Why am I always the one that's dealing with this? Why is nobody else dealing with this? Well, that's because they're solely focused inward. Right? They're solely focused on the single thing that they know, which is themselves. And that becomes a second roadblock to your ability to be able to adequately address change and move forward in a positive manner. Now, the third biggest roadblock when it comes to change is that we get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Right? It's like, it's like when you get a little scratch on your elbow, right? You patch it up and you know it's there, but it doesn't really bother you enough to make a real change. And so for a lot of people, when they look at their relationships and when they look at their business, when they look at their health and their life, they're solely focused on the idea that, well, I'm comfortable with the way it is now. It's okay, right? It's all right. It doesn't need to change right now. Maybe in 5 years or maybe in the next couple months. And so they just sort of deal with it. And that becomes your working environment. That becomes your day-to-day, just dealing with that change. And so when you take each one of these separately, you can see how by themselves they may not cause a lot of problems in your life, right? They may not completely throw your life out of whack. But when you use all three of these roadblocks to deal with changing your business, changing your life, changing your relationships, over time you get farther and farther away from what you really want. You get farther away from your true goals. You get farther away from living the life that you want. And what does that cost you? What does that cost you as a provider of your family? What does that cost you as the mother or the father? What does that cost you as the employee, as the leader? What does that cost you as the creative, the artistic? Right? When you take these steps back, when you decide to avoid change, when you decide to push it in the corner, when you decide to overly focus on yourself and not what's going on, then your life sort of gets on autopilot. And you start to get comfortable with being behind. And you start getting comfortable with not dealing with the day-to-day things that are going to help push your life forward. So what do? How do we respond, right? How do we respond to change in a positive way? How do you respond to change in a way that pushes your life forward, that makes your relationships better, that makes your business better, that makes the world better? Well, there's three things that I always talk about with my clients, right? And it's this idea of you first have to decode, then you have to scan, and then you have to apply, right? I say that again, decode, scan, apply. And what does that mean, right? When it comes to decode, you have to look at what's going on, right? What is going on as it relates to your industry, your environment, right? To how other people are dealing with this situation, right? What does it look like in the long term? How do you see your success in a long-term application? That's what decode means, right? When change happens, how is it affecting myself? And what do I want in the future? Not short term, not 2 months from now, 3 months from now, but what do I want 6 months from now? What do I want 5 years from now? What do I want 10 years from now? So anytime you're dealing with change, start by looking at the long-term effects, right? What is going to happen 3 years from now if I make this change? And how can it be for the best, right? After decode, you want to scan. And scan is one of the crucial things to your success, right? What is going on with this change and how does it relate to my wealth, my health, my relationships? If you run a business, a creative business, how are my customers dealing with this change? How are my clients going to deal with this change? How is my competition and my community going to deal with this change? Right? So you can start thinking of a respond that's adequate, a respond that's going to help you, not hurt you, and a respond that's going to put you in the best possible situation to deal with the change. And the last concept is apply. Or like what I like to say is act, right? There's this idea that we need to sit back and wait, right? I don't want to be the first, but I don't want to be the last. I want to be somewhere in the middle. Well, the key is when you learn these things, when you look at it from a long-term perspective, when you look at change from how it's affecting your life and your relationships and the people around you and the community, well, then you can start to apply and act in ways that are going to push you forward. They're going to give you the best possibility for change. That's going to help you move your life and your business forward. And so those are the things that I want you to take away from today. I want you to look at change, right, in your life. And I want you to start thinking about how you productively can use change to create a life you want. And so don't get caught up in the roadblocks, right? Don't get overly obsessed with short-term responses to change. Don't get overly obsessed with how does this affect me and me only, right? And don't get complacent. Don't get comfortable with being comfortable, right? Decode the situation, figure out what's going on, figure out how it's going to affect you, not only short term, but long term, right? And then look at how it's going to affect your life, your relationships, your business, your clients, your customers, your communities. And then apply what you've learned, because you're smart enough and you're intelligent enough to know what's going to work for you in your life. And the goal here today is to give you the tools to do that effectively and efficiently. So I'm excited for everybody that's listening. If you have any comments, anything I can answer, any questions, comment below. If you think somebody you know needs to hear this message, share it with them. Get them on board. Let them know that I understand, and we all understand what change affects, right? I'm not sitting here telling you that I haven't dealt with this. These are the things that I dealt with and I still deal with on a day-to-day basis, right? How do I, we have our second child on the way. What is my life going to look like? How am I going to do my Wednesday wins? How am I going to run my business? How's my wife going to run her successful wedding business, right? What does our day-to-day look like? These are questions that I think about. And I could say, oh, is me. Nobody else has ever dealt with 2 kids before. Nobody else has ever did this. And that's not true. That's me lying to myself, right? So I got to find healthy ways to deal with the things that are happening in my life. And so my goal today for you is to get past the roadblocks, to stop procrastinating and start doing and create a life that works for you. So I'm so excited that you're here today. Thank you, Kurt and Kat and Brandon and Terry and Rob and everybody that was on the call this morning and the people that I may have forgotten that haven't popped up yet. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so glad you're here. And please share it with anybody that you think needs to hear this message. Now, a side note, if you're a creative entrepreneur and you run your own business, right, and you're looking for tactics and ways to get your life back on track, check out my closed group, The Art of Lifestyle Design. And in this group, I specifically work with creative entrepreneurs, artists, makers, movers, and shakers that are looking to create a life they love while building a business that runs efficiently, that runs like clockwork so they can have the life they truly deserve. Once again, welcome, and I'm so glad that you joined another episode of Wednesday Wins. I'll see you next Wednesday as we start to discuss more topics like this. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Have a blessed day. Oh, and one more thing before I leave, I have to give a shout out. I don't know if you can see this. Let's see if I can get this down. So I'm from Muncie, Indiana, and I went to a cool little t-shirt shop in my hometown when I was back home. And I met this cool guy that does some creative t-shirt work. But I just thought this was really dope, right? Muncie, the Muncie Chief, which is what we were named after. And he's got Muncie and Chief in the t-shirt. I think that was really dope. Creatives doing creative work, right? So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful Wednesday. And I am Jason Teeters, your lifestyle designer, and I'm